morning or good afternoon. We've been having too much fun, so it feels like still morning. And I'm so glad that you're still energetic. Thank you. So without further notice, time here, I'm going to ask you to welcome our friend Matt Plummer, who works with Gigamon. And he has over 24 years experience in cybersecurity and has done a lot of jobs. And his passion is cybersecurity. And you can see when he starts talking about this. He has worked with various entities from federal government, higher education, and all over. He has held several roles in cybersecurity. So he's going to talk to us about reducing the time to have bad actors at your house. You don't want a bad actor in your house, right? You want them to, if they are able to come to your house, to be there as short as possible. So he's going to talk to us about that. So can you please help me welcome Matt?
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take that look. Thank you. Thanks. All right. Well, thank you. I hope I can keep you guys awake. I don't want to turn this thing off. You don't want to do that? Awesome. Appreciate it. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining. We'll spend the next 30 minutes, if you could stay awake and you want to ask some questions. There's some topics in here that we can obviously go really deep into. I'm not sure where we want to go, so I'll start the conversation, and if people want to ask questions, I'm happy to go deeper. I'm happy to stay up at the higher level. Really just kind of direct me as we go, and we'll figure our way through this. So I found these two articles as I was kind of just thinking through the conversation we were going to have here today. I do a lot of zero trust conversations. That's really what I've been concentrating on for the last 6 months, is zero trust. So when I got asked to do this one on dwell time, similar, yes, but I started asking myself, well, what is some of the things that maybe leaders, experts in the field are going to be looking at? And this one hit last week, which I thought was pretty interesting. It was on the 5th of October. 5th of October. And it just started talking about ransomware and how long intruders and adversaries are inside the network, which is everything we're really going to talk to today. When I start walking through the process, we're going to be looking at really the dwell time, how long someone's in the network. But we're also going to start getting a little deeper into how do we stop intruders? How do we find them quicker? How do we get them out of the network, save money, don't let files be deleted and sent away? So that's what we're going to talk about. So obviously this is me. We've already gone through it. I'm not going to sit here very long and tell you much about me because that already happened. I'm the public sector CTO for Gigamon. Like I said, doing a lot of zero trust work. 24 years working with federal government type identities within, mostly on the East Coast, obviously. Helped build out C2S for AWS back in the day. Was part of that network. And then obviously throughout the last, 12-ish years, been concentrating more within the financial industries, building out Chicago Mercantile Exchange, putting them on Amazon, doing things in that realm, mostly around the security side of things. So, agenda, we're not going to go through this right now. This is what we're doing. You guys can see what we're going to talk about. Pretty much already talked to you about it today. The MITRE attack piece that we're going to get to in a little bit, I've heard it already 3 times today. So if you guys have heard it enough and you want to breeze on through it, we can. But there is some things in there that I haven't heard with regards to the MITRE attack framework when it comes to dwell times. So I'll touch a little bit, and then, like I said, we can kind of maneuver in the direction we want to go. I have quite a few slides here. It's about 40 slides, I think, so we can go a lot longer than 30 if we need to. I mean, if you want to go a different direction. All right, so as we start to look at the facts, if you will, I like to start my conversations around zero trust the same way I was thinking about starting this one, which is the attackers only have to get it right, one time. As the adversaries are trying to get into your network, it's one time right, they're in. If they get it wrong 100 times, they're just going to try 101 times. As the SOC goes, as the infrastructure has been built, if you don't get it right every time, then they've obviously gotten in, right? So there's some stats that we're going to go through here just to kind of level set and get this conversation rolling. So work with me for the first 5 minutes as we throw out some numbers that you might agree with, you might not agree with, but I think overall they're kind of level setting. So 73%, yep, 73% of organizations have fallen victim over the last 24 months to some type of ransomware attack. It's a pretty big number. One where I actually had to go back and double check it. So this is obviously from IBM, I believe. Oh, Socos, thank you. So there's some different numbers out there. They're all about the same though. So they're all right in this range. It's a pretty big number. If you start looking at where we were back in 2020 with about 170,000, about $170,000 of payout to where we went in 2021, around 800,000 to today, 812,000, rough number across the average payout, if you will. Now that's skewed a little bit. Obviously, there's been some massive payouts, 20, 40, $50 million have been paid in ransomware. That's going to bump up the number quite a bit. I heard a stat earlier this morning from a speaker that a lot of them are in the single $1,000 digits. It's probably true. But the fact of the matter is that at $750,000 paying out ransomware, there's been someone in your network. Dwell time has been probably up in the months, if not years. And that conversation is just going to continue. So we'll continue that conversation here in a minute. So 130, this is the big number for me. Different strands, different ransomware strands detected in 2020. I don't have the 2021 number. I did a lot of digging trying to find that. I found different numbers that were so far apart, I decided to leave this one in here. But what it comes to me and what it shows me is that the toolkits that are being used out there, the toolkits like Goat Loader and you can go down the laundry list of what they are. Mouse Island, I think that's the big one right now. Those are working, and those are open source for the most part. And if those are out there for us to grab and use and get into the system, that number of 40, 50 million is just going to continue to grow. So dwell time, everybody in here is smart, and they're going to have a little bit different definition of what dwell time is. But I think overall, we're all going to agree that dwell time is really just the time when someone has intruded the network, and they are now within the network, and they're moving within the network. They could be moving laterally or not. It doesn't matter. They're inside the network. They're starting to cause mischief. They're starting to get into things they shouldn't be into and preparing for what inevitably is going to come, which is going to be that they're going to start asking for money or start encrypting files. They're going to start sending out stuff you don't want sent out. So if we can all agree on that, then I think I can move off this slide pretty quickly. One of the pieces, though, that I want to make sure we're all on the same page on, especially when we get to the MITRE attack framework, is around the definition, just understanding what MTDD means, the fact that it's the mean time of detection, and then the mean time of remediation or remediate. Those are just the key phrases that I'm going to talk to quite a bit throughout this conversation. So if you have anything on that, and if you have anything you want to ask, by all means, jump up, let me know. Okay? All right. So from this point forward, we're going to start getting into some more deeper numbers and then into attack framework. So average days that somebody's in the network, within your network, 280 days. That's the average right now. If you go back to like the SolarWinds attack, you're going to see it was just over a year. There's a lot of mischief that can happen within a network in 200 days, 280 days. When a breach occurs, what is the attacker doing within that network? How are they trying to move within your network? There's a lot of things that can happen within the SOC at that time. The SOC has responsibility, obviously, to try to keep them out. But once they're in, what are they doing? Well, their job then is to try to make sure that the SOC, I think I just said NOC. The SOC is not able to see them. They're changing log files. They're changing the levels of which things are going to be reported. You really can't trust anything coming out of that anymore. So within 280 days to start to cause mischief, a lot of things are happening. 69% SOC analysts, and this I'm going to have to kind of just read a little bit because I don't think I can reword it. So if you see it up there, just I'm saying the same thing you're reading. But the SOC analysts cite the lack of visibility into the network traffic as the top reason. So what is that telling you? And what it tells me is that if you don't have visibility of what's happening in your network, you're never going to be able to stop what's moving within your network. It doesn't matter if we're talking, east, west, or north, south. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. If you don't have visibility of what's going on, and yes, we can talk NDR, and we will, EDR, we will, SIMs, we will. We can talk all of those. And I'm a big, I like talking about the triad effect, right? I like all of those within your network. But we'll get to why that's not feasible for a lot of different networks. 84% SOC analysts rank minimization of false positives. So this is an interesting one. I mean, it's a double negative, right? So if the SOC is chasing down false positives and you have a total SOC of 5 people, 100 people, it doesn't matter, and you have however many of those false positives that you're getting, you're spending a lot of time running down things that you shouldn't be running down, while things that you should be running down are probably happening in the background. There's a lot to that sentence, and when you think about, I'll give an example. I ran a private cloud company for a few years in the recent decade. A small cloud company that had very, very few employees, but they had very pinpointed customers. They had a NOC and a SOC. There was 5 people total in that NOC and SOC. You can imagine when you started getting hundreds and hundreds of false positives, what happened. It went to a crawl. And that's what that right there is saying, and I believe in it strongly. 52% SOC analysts report they need, I can't see it on the screen, report they need access to more out of the box. So the tools they have just aren't working, right? The tools that they need that just aren't there today. So they're asking for more out of the box. And it's important to get the SOC what they need. That's what's going to be pretty much the saving factor for them. Once they can get the tools they need and start really analyzing and seeing what's there, running playbooks, and being able to have visibility into the network, they're going to be able to do stuff. But those false positives are going to continue to hurt them. Okay. I promise I built the slides. I just didn't know I was going to do that. So interesting. All right, so what am I saying here? Basically, what I'm trying to get at here is visibility is foundational. You have to have visibility. Parallel hunting capabilities, they're foundational. Those are the pieces that are most important to everything that's up here. And the bottom part is just reiterating that. All right. So you've heard me say it a few times, visibility. Well, not having visibility in the network is going to give you, I mean, just a headache. It really is. And we're left just hunting in isolation at that point. And as we start to hunt in isolation, we don't then have the simple facts that are in front of us. We don't have any of the information that we're going to need to start to find those vulnerabilities, start to attack the vulnerabilities, keep the ones out that aren't in yet, so on and so forth. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to put a spotlight on it. And I did this kind of the same conversation talk in New York yesterday, slightly different twist, but this picture came up, and the question that was given to me was, well, why don't you just light up the whole room? Why do you have this light that just got a little bit bigger? And the answer is pretty simple in my mind, which is you're never going to have an organization that's going to be able to see everything that's happening in the network. It's going to be very difficult. I won't say you never will, but it's going to be very difficult. The amount of money it's going to take is a lot, but that's not even the problem. The problem is the amount of data that you're going to have. The amount of data that you're going to have if you had visibility to the whole room would be astronomical in most environments, and you wouldn't even know what to do with it. The problem you're going to run into is just illuminating everything would make it just as hard, in my opinion, as not having anything. So, the conversation kind of went off the rails at that point, with regards to what you can see and what you can't see. But that's the point of having this as just a spotlight and not a whole room illumination. So I've kind of started talking to it. I'm going to beat you over the head now before I go into a real-life example. As we talk about visibility, we're going to look at, in my opinion, 4 things: device, on-prem, cloud, and teleworkers. Teleworkers is a new one that's been added. Obviously, it's in COVID. I didn't have teleworkers on this slide 2 years ago. Never even thought of having the word teleworkers on there 2 years ago because we had VPN. You had secure VPN, and everyone said, oh, it's secure, we're good, we're never going to have a problem. And everyone here can chuckle and laugh and say, okay, well, we all knew that. No one listens to us. But the point is, we said everything within our system, all of our devices were in this private network, so we weren't going to worry about them. Well, enter in the visibility of all these different pieces. And you have device visibility. Device visibility, I believe, is a big one. What are your endpoints? Understanding what those are. Obviously, EDR is going to help with that. It's not the end-all solution, in my opinion, and I think you've kind of started to hear why, but I'll continue to say why. You have things that just aren't going to be, we're not going to be able to look at. IoT devices. What about unmanaged devices? What about the devices that just really, aren't really doing much? I had a conversation about a fax machine, not a fax machine, a copy machine that had its own, its own brain, and that's how they got into the system. They used that to intrude. Well, no one was paying attention to that. It wasn't managed. It was just sitting there on the network. If you had visibility to everything on your network, yeah, we might be able to talk in a different story. On-premise visibility, detections, solutions limited to egress and ingress. Okay, so now we're limiting ourselves to, some points. That's good. I guess we're starting to get there. Cloud infrastructure. Yeah, cloud infrastructure. That's going to be anything within your hybrid or your distributed networks. So those are the pieces that we're going to start talking to with all the different cloud providers. And then, like I said, the telework stuff. It's a new tomorrow, guys. This is not going away. I think you guys have all seen it. I'd be surprised if everyone in here is back at work full time. And quite frankly, I don't know very many companies that are going to go back to full time, everyone back in the office, unless you have clearance stuff that you're working on. But visibility into those remote sites, visibility into those devices that are not managed. So let's talk about an example here. I'm going to build it out just because I guess I'm not going to build it out, but I really wish I could walk around. All right, so let's talk about the attacker. The attacker has 3 ways into the system. Yeah, but they're trying to film me. I don't know. Yeah, gotta look good, Anyways, I like your point though. So 3 ways in. Intruders trying to come in. They're going to come in. Try to figure out the way they're coming into the system. At this point, they're going to have, Active Directory. My personal favorite. That's the one I'm going to go to first if I can get in. That Active Directory is going to give you pretty much everything you need. But Active Directory, we're going to continue to build out. We've gone through the sales department, maybe R&D. Doesn't matter what department it is. Enter your own department. Same is going to work in your scenario. We've started to infect hosts at this point. We're starting to call home. We're starting to say, hey, we've gotten some stuff. We're going to continue to play around in here. We're going to just hide out. No one's seen us yet. We've done it right as the hacker. You've done it wrong as the SOC. Good job. And we're gonna continue through. You've gone through in your different payloads. Maybe now you're going to start to pull stuff back. You've altered files. You've altered the levels, so now it's not being seen. Even if the SOC sees it, the EDR is going to throw a flag. It's going to say, no, it's within the normal realm. You're at the good percentage. You're good. And then we're going to start to have I think number 5 just came up, maybe. You're going to start to hit different devices within. Number 6 should come up here. So now you're going to move laterally. If you're starting to move laterally within the environment, you've done really good. It's probably going to be, at this point, you're probably going to encrypt it. You're not going to have a tool on the network that's going to be able to see this encrypted data. So now you're going to move very easily throughout the network. Well, now the attacker really starts to have fun. He's going to start to take that data back, put it somewhere else, or the worst thing that can happen, they're going to encrypt the data, and now you don't have access to it. How long did it take? Well, from the stuff we looked at 5 minutes ago, it took 280 days. They've probably been in there for 6 months. They've probably been hanging out, trying to grab your data, figuring out, how to get a lot of money. Now what we're seeing, though, is, and this isn't a ransomware talk, but what we're seeing a lot of is now they're, doing, double, 3 times, 4 times the payout. Hey, do you want your data? Oh, yeah, by the way, we still have it. Now you have to pay for the, to get the data unencrypted. Now you have to pay for this to delete the data. There's all this stuff that's happening, and we're seeing all of it across the board. It's something that honestly is keeping us considerably busy, being Gigamon and being a visibility, network visibility company, right? So let's look at the same diagram, but let's kind of break it out a little differently. And let's say at this point, did it build? Yeah. Let's say we now have at the very bottom visibility into that network. Well, if we start to have the visibility, we can start to analyze the metadata. We can basically start to look at the TLS and SSL data. We can now start bringing those tools in. We can do inspection. We can look to see what that encrypted data might be. So I'm going to keep building out because now we've gone through our network. We're going to look at any privileges that have been escalated. We're going to look at lateral movement. What's happening? Is there anything different that's going on? I said a while ago, zero trust is my main point, right? My main push right now. And with zero trust, it's very similar to this piece right here, which is trust no one. So once you've gained access to the system, if you want to move laterally within the system, well, you should have a tool of some sort that's been built that's going to stop that lateral movement unless you have those permissions. That's kind of where we are at this point. With this, can you break and inspect? I think TLS and SSL managers come up. So you have those popping up at this point. So you now have a solution that's starting to form to keep intruders, attackers out of your network, or if they're in your network, you're able to find them a little quicker than 280 days. But really, once they're inside your network, the attacker has now switched. The attacker and your SOC have now switched. So before I told you they had to get it right once. Well, now they're in the system. They can't be found, so they can't get it wrong. So I know it sounds weird, but the way that we're thinking about how you have the visibility into your network, you now, as the SOC or company, now have the ability to find the intruder just a little faster. And if they do something wrong, sending data, trying to call home, whatever it might be, you now have that ability to get them. And hopefully it's soon enough. Hopefully it's something that you can stop maybe a payload or calling out to whatever company at the top it is. Stop that lateral movement, stop the privileged escalation, stop whatever it might be, right? So now that we've kind of talked a little bit about the example, I wanted to talk about proactive threat hunting, but I'm just going to kind of dip my toe in the water with this one for a moment, go back out, and then we'll come back to it, because I want to end the conversation on the proactive threat hunting. I think it's important to stop dwell time if you can come up with how you're actively going to be attacking this. So as we start looking at this, I want to talk through what we're looking at from the core. And proactive, to me, it's all about coming up with a hypothesis. So you have to formulate that hypothesis. Once you formulate the hypothesis, you're going to conduct a search. Well, as you all learned back in middle school and elementary school, once you've come up with a hypothesis, if it doesn't work, you have to try again. So if it didn't work, if it was broken, then okay, great. We're gonna have to come back and just do this over again. If it did, good job. We've now have a hypothesis. We're now going to start to prove out that hypothesis. And really what we're trying to get to is, what does it mean? Well, it means the SOC analyst, have to start with the hypothesis. The SOC is the one that knows your environment. They're the one, I can give you 100 of them. They probably won't, and none of them will probably work for you. because they have to be with your environment. So they have to be specific to you. So as we start to find and prove out these hypotheses, they're going to grow, and they're going to continue to grow, and that's when that top green check mark is going to become something that's actually valuable to you. So walking through these different stages, if this makes sense to you, you're going to be fine with the section of MITRE ATT&CK. If it doesn't make sense to you, then let me know, raise your hand, throw something at me, and we'll go back and do it again. All right, keep beating you over the head with these little diagrams and what I think is important. Activity is a big one for me. So as we start looking activity, so as we talk about like north and south perimeter security logs, firewalls, IDSs, those are going to be your web gateways, whatever. Those are going to be the ones that we're talking about here. There's some positives to that, which notifications, great. You're going to get those notifications. You're going to understand what's coming. There's some negatives also. If you don't have the visibility, then really what you're doing is you're taking or you're hoping that what you're getting from your firewalls and your other tools is going to be what you need. And you're going to think you're safe, but you're not. Sorry. Not that anyone here is surprised. As we keep going down, flow activity. So the flow logs, these are your on-prem network switches, your routers, those type of devices. Positives on that is going to be it's collecting your north and south and your east and west activity. The negative on that, though, is going to be around visibility. So, you're limited to layer 3. You're limited to layer 3. Sorry, but Zero Trust is layer 4. Layer 3 headers, and with that, you're going to be limited to a lot of different payloads. So now we're starting to get a little more technical. We're starting to talk about what's coming across. Do you have access to see what you need? It all comes back again. Sorry, going to say it, visibility. And then last one on this one, packet activity. So for this one, it's deep. I have it as deep packet analysis. What I mean by that is basically across all the different clouds. Are we looking about on-prem, network, IoT devices, basically everything that's there? Do we have that 360 degrees of visibility across all of them? That's including your payloads. That's including everything within storage and so on. All right. So MITRE ATT&CK framework. So just show of hands so I know how deep I'm going at. Does anyone here not know what MITRE ATT&CK framework is? Okay. All right. All right. All right. So MITRE ATT&CK framework built by MITRE. It's a attack behavior tool is really what it comes down to. It allows for companies, organizations to pretty much be on the same baseline of where you need to be when you start talking about all these tools. So as you have this tool that's been built, nonprofit company built it, everyone's out there that's talking about this type of stuff is using it. It gives you that common security vocabulary lexicon to have that conversation. It also has the playbooks. It also has the connection. It also has everything you really want to see. It even has built in the lack of visibility for your SOC, which is kind of interesting. They've purposely built a portion to mirror what's happening today. So the common security vocabulary when discussing these tools and tactics will come directly out of this tool. And as we start to build, I'll just build it out so we can all see it and you can read through it as I'm talking. But there's basically a lot of technology that's out there. We've talked a little bit about it: firewall, webs, web security gateways, email security, so on. Right? We can go down this laundry list. I think I've said a few of them today: IDS, IPS, etc. So as we're looking at those, we need to figure out how do we stop the attacker from gaining access to those devices, and that's the piece that this is going to help us with. It's critical to basically the posture that your company is trying to build. If you can come up with the playbooks that mirror and use what they have and prove that you can find the intruders, find the attackers, keep them out, that's what this is going to bring to the table. I don't know if there's anything else I want to say on this one, but I'm going to stay on MITRE framework for just a moment. All right. So the SOC visibility gap. So what we've done, and I don't know if you can see it. I'm taking this with me. Sorry. What you can see is the red line at the top. That red line at the top is your SOC visibility gap. The left side here, obviously, being your frontline security. So when we start to look at the SOC visibility gap, and we're looking at real world risks, we can start to have our tools look at it and go, okay, our SOC is overwhelmed. They are looking for fill in the blank, a toolkit, Mouse Island, right? We're running that. We're going to be pumping back into here. We're going to find the different risks and different security violations and so forth. And we're going to follow all the way down, and we're going to find, hopefully, the way to make this safer. But what we are probably not going to do, as I build this out, is come up with the products that you're going to need. And I can't tell you what products you're going to need because everyone's networks are different. But as they go through this, as they go through all these different steps, you're going to see that I put in NDR. Now, I said NDR a little while ago, and I won't look at the person, but their eyes got real big. And I think I might have made them mad or something. So again, I'm not going to look at them. But NDR is just the starting point. You have to have more than an NDR. And if you don't agree with that, come talk to me afterwards, because that's a conversation that's going to take a lot longer. But in my opinion, NDR, EDR, and I'm going to go SIM. You can say logs. You can go down. I think if you were in the other round, you heard about XDR. There's a lot of different pieces out there. But at the end, we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to have the tools that's going to give you that visibility. I should count how many times I said that in this thing. You're going to have that visibility to see what is happening. And that is what, again, this is providing you. You do a time check. What time am I supposed to be over? Oh, boy. Okay. We're going to skip through a few of this. I didn't realize it was that far. I've been talking for that long. Most of you are still awake. All right, so I'm going to go through here real quick. So I have these two, well, I'm going to go three just because I'm jumping really quickly. So what I've done is I've started talking about the SIM that I was talking about here, and then you have your NDR and you have your EDR. And what that gives me is a triad effect, which is going to look like that. Beautiful, isn't it? You know what's funny? Is that triad is what I use for my zero trust. So as we're talking about zero trust, again, I said not exactly the same, but it's pretty much in line with what we're talking about today. Man, I'm sorry, guys. I really didn't pay attention to my time. So we're going to kind of skip through real quick, but what I wanted to get to in the very end here was threat hunting. Threat hunting is the critical piece, in my opinion. So everything we talked about so far is how you get your network ready, have it, have the visibility, but you need to have the ability to set up your threat hunting. You need to be able to do something I'm going to go right here, in here, where you're going to be able to ask the questions, you're going to have your visibility, and then you're going to be able to do all the pieces that you have to ask yourself, which is who are the threat actors? What are they doing? What are the technical observations that your SOC is seeing? If you can start to answer those questions, the dwell time within your network is going to reduce drastically. It's just going to come down just for the sheer factor of you're asking the questions, therefore you're doing the right things, therefore the people that are that are gaining access or at least hitting your network aren't, or your SOC is now saying, okay, that's a false positive, we're just going to move on and they're going to identify the threats and the actors that they need to start identifying. And I'm going to go ahead and jump forward here. Just a moment. Slides are online. They're under this one if you want to see them. But I'm going to jump online over to this one right here, and we'll end it with this one, I guess, which is just data and understanding. So it's pretty important to me that you, as we're looking through and we start migrating into the vector, if you will, how are we going to start understanding, first who the threats are, whether those artifacts are related, what are the behaviors, all the different pieces. If we can start to understand those, then we start to understand the visibility. And that's what we were talking about in the very beginning. If we can understand the visibility, what can we see? What can we start to interact with? Can we get the data encryption, the lateral movement, the east and west traffic? Can we start to see what that's going to be? We're going to quickly get into and understand the search capability, which if you take anything away from this, if you can get to the search capability and understanding what data is in there, then you're going to basically have, I'm just going to jump ahead. You're basically going to have this right here. Visibility gaps, leverage the existing tools, telemetry, and make up for missing items as best you can. What am I trying to say there? Well, if you have visibility gaps, you need to figure out quickly, understand the operations to hunt and really just start to leverage the existing capabilities that you have. Not most are going to have an NDR, an EDR, SIM, a firewall that's Palo Alto or fill in the blank. They're not going to have all the top things. They're going to have 2 of them. They're going to have 3 of them. They might have 1 of them. They're going to need to start figuring out what those are quickly. And that's going to give you, the endpoint visibility that makes up that lack of everything else that you might have. So since I am now over time by 6 minutes, I apologize. But hopefully this was educational. If you want to talk anymore, let me know. Thanks.